Hey everybody, welcome to our EGG202 final project B, which is Yahtzee. So in this one, it's going to be a little bit more of a challenging project for one reason, because I'm not going to give so much help on this one. So I would maybe assume that either you would take on this project either if you're more advanced, or at least you got the project A to work. So that means you already have a good idea of how to sort of handle picture boxes and display images and so forth. So I would suggest, I would think that at this point you would have you'd be more comfortable working with this. So I'm not going to give as much help, but the logic for this game is not insanely complicated. So let's go to, this is first display or first demo of how this game works. And then we'll go back and I'll go over the actual code slightly. So right here, initially in Play Yahtzee, we have these 6 dices or dice. I'm not sure what the correct plural for this. I'm going to say dices. I guess you can make fun of me afterwards for incorrectly using the word dices. So whatever. So right now, we have all of these possible moves right there, which I'll go over in a second. And then right now, we have all these buttons, roll, and so quit button, of course, you always have to have that. And it's always sort of clickable. But roll is not clickable, start is. Okay, so I'm going to click on start. And I have to roll the dice. So right now, everything is like this, so roll. And we can see that we have these dice popped up. And it shows that was my roll 1. So you have 2 rolls, basically. And Yahtzee is kind of like poker, except there's no flush, it's just numbers only. So you notice, I can play any of these right now. So at the moment, let me see, I have, let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5. I actually do have a small straight. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this dice right now. So 2, 3, 4, and 5. So when I click on this dice, you notice that it's going to sort of set it to a red color. If I click on it again, it sort of unchecks it. So you have to make sure you can actually handle this. So I'm going to go ahead and keep it like this. I'm going to try to go for a large straight right now. So Yahtzee, one of the hands is a straight. So a straight is going to be a small straight is if you have 4 dices that are consecutive, so 2, 3, 4, and 5. A large straight is if all 5 dices or dies have they're consecutive. So I'm going to roll again. Well, it looks like I got 2 5s, but I'm going to actually play. I'm going to play a small straight. So essentially, a small straight is going to just basically give me a point total. I get 30 points because I was able to get a small straight. So now I'm going to, roll again. So once I click on one of these, you can notice that all of these become grayed out right away. And I have to roll. So I'm going to roll. That's my first roll. And now all these buttons are not going to be enabled except the small straight. So for one sitting of the game of Yahtzee, you can't play more than one, play more than once. So I can't play small straight again. So luckily I did get a small straight. So that way I'm so good. So, actually right now, look at this. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I already got a large straight right there. So I'm not going to roll a dice actually in this case. I'm going to go right away to large straight. Click on this. Displays 40 because 40 points is going to be awarded for a large straight. So I have 70 points so far I've earned. So, lucky me so far. So this is actually the first demonstration I've done so far. So it's already off to a pretty good start. So I'm going to now click on roll again. So my first roll. So right now I have, I have like a small straight, but I can't go for a small straight anymore. So I'm going to try something different. So all I got so far is just these 2 2s that could be used for something. I'm going to click on those, I hit roll, and these 2 are not going to get rolled. I only roll just the unmarked dies or dices. I'm going to hit roll. Well, let's see. So right now I have essentially, I can play 2s, which will add up sort of just these 2s. I could play 3 of a kind because I do have 3 2s, and it's going to add up all of these dice values. But since it's a very small 3 of a kind, I kind of rather just play 2s instead. So it's going to give me the value 6. It adds up all the dice that has the value 6 and so forth. If I play again, I'll roll again. And now again, you can see I can play any of these, but I can't play the ones I've already played before. So let's say, for example, I roll once and roll again. And now I'm going to say, well, let's say, so essentially, let's say, for example, I already played several plays already. So I don't want to play the whole game. It'll take too long to play this. I'm already 5 minutes into this video. So let's say at some point what happens is, let's say you already played several of these, you can't play any more, then what you can do is you can actually, sort of play these ones, but they're going to write in the value 0. So the idea is that in Yahtzee, there are moments where you have the dice rolled and the numbers you come up with are not usable for anything. Or maybe you could play a small straight again, but the problem is once you play it once, you can't play it once more. So what happens at some point in Yahtzee is you have to select one of these plays no matter what. I'll select Yahtzee, and it's going to give me the value 0 because I don't have an actual Yahtzee. Yahtzee is if all 5 dices are all the same. So in Yahtzee, at some point what happens is when you get towards the end of the game, you only have a few more moves left that you can play, and let's say the dice you have doesn't match that move type, then you have to assign a 0 to it. So of course the game ends once all of these have been played and you display the total points awarded to the player. So that's sort of how you want to implement this game, and of course you can have a different, more nicer UI than this. I kind of whipped this up pretty quickly, so it's not a very nice UI, but it's good enough. Okay, let's go ahead now, go to the PDF and just go over the details of how to implement this Yahtzee game. Alright, so this is going to be the form you want to work with, and essentially we have 5 picture boxes, and I label them accordingly. I call them PB Dice 1, PB Dice 2, and so forth. These are actually not the not the best looking UI. In fact, these dices are not even like the same dimensions. So I think I wrote this program a while ago when I was still new to this environment. So I think I kind of rushed this UI a little bit. But of course, you can make the UI look a lot nicer. This is just an idea of how it's supposed to look. Now, of course, you can label each picture box maybe just P0, P1, P2, or you can say, dice, so dice 0, dice, whatever. But you can give it an easy name if you want, because you're going to have to, of course, load the references of each of these picture boxes into an array of size 5. Again, just so it's easier to work with it in your code. Now, of course, you have the start, roll, and of course, ever so important quit button. And of course, I have this label right here, which displays the roll number. Then I have this list of these boxes right here, or yeah, these buttons, sorry. List of buttons right here for each kind of play. And beside it, this label is going to display the number of the play. Let's say we hit ones, it's going to give you an actual value. So the value of that move, I have it right here. Of course, the form load clears all these out. So the idea is once I click on one of these, when I want to play a move, it's going to gray that button out, and it will keep it grayed out for the rest of the game. So the whole idea is you only can play each of these only one time. So after you do your roll, you can do a second roll. These will all be ungrayed except for the ones you've clicked on before. So just make sure that you're careful with that, I guess. So that's sort of the whole UI look, and of course you can make it look nicer than what I did right there. I just sort of whipped this up quickly, but of course, there's no rush. I mean, I'd imagine that if you're working on this lab, you're kind of already got the first lab or got part A working, or you're feeling confident about this, and of course you have a lot of time to work on this, so of course no need to rush through this UI. Okay, now let's go to the actual the overview of the actual events and so forth as to how you want to implement this Yahtzee game. Alright, so I guess I have the the plays in here. So this is the Yahtzee game, and of course for each type of play, ones or aces, twos, threes, fours, fives, small straight, large straight, three of a kind, so forth, it gives you sort of the rule for what you have to have, and of course you display the number accordingly. So the idea for some of these, so for example, let's say you click on small straight button. Let's say if you don't have a small straight, then you have to display a 0 to that label beside the small straight. And if there is a small straight, you have to display the number 30. So the idea is that at times in Yahtzee, you can have to select one of these plays, even though you don't have the dices that match that play, but you have no choice because you have to the game is over once you played every possible play or move. But anyway, this is going to be essentially how you get the score of each kind of play. And of course, you have to display a 0 if the dices you have doesn't match the particular play you clicked on. So that's just to double check that. So of course, I guess I did a screenshot of how the form has to look like. And of course, you can modify it, make it look a little nicer. But, you know, there's just a screenshot of the form that I sort of did on Visual Studio and C#. So of course, there's a form object. So of course, here's going to be the members you're gonna, or the actual class members you're gonna have. And you can of course add more class members to this project, but of course, you're gonna want to have a selected boolean, so it tells you which dices have been selected and which ones haven't been selected. When you're doing your rolls, you click on that dice, remember, and it has to sort of, you know, show it as a red or uncheck the red or remove that red if you click on it again. So that tells you if that dice was selected or not. Then of course you have this array of dice values. You know, each element will be 1 through 6 in each element in this array. Then of course your dices array, of course you're gonna have to get each reference from that form and put it into this dices array, very similar to the tic-tac-toe and the to the memory game. And of course, you want to have an array of play buttons because in your program, as you remember, at a certain time you gray out all 13 of those play buttons, so the 1s, aces, 2s, 3s, all the way to Yahtzee. So using this array makes it so easy to sort of using a loop to gray all them out or to ungray them and so forth. So you want to set these buttons up accordingly, so it makes it a bit easier so you can loop through all the buttons and enable and disable them accordingly. Then of course we have a Boolean roll, because remember we have roll 1, roll 2, which is just sort of a binary situation. So of course if it's true, it's the first roll. If it's false, second roll. It's very simple to flip from true to false accordingly. So remember, if you say roll equals not roll, it's going to flip that Boolean. So anyway, let's look at the events. I don't give you any pseudocode here, but of course, the logic is a little bit extra work than a memory game, but of course, setting everything up is very similar to that memory game. So I'll let you kind of, you know, work on that. But of course, you have to, you know, set up the picture box and this dices array and a play buttons array. You want to make them set them up so they all point to accordingly to each element on that on the form. And of course, initialize any of your variables accordingly. So, you know, just very basic stuff right there. And then button start button will disable itself, and then it's going to enable the roll button, which means the game now begins. And of course, the start button is going to clear out all the labels that contain numbers. So if in the previous game you played, you wanted to clear out those numbers and then, you know, start fresh. And of course, it will, you know, set all of the buttons all to be enableable. So those play buttons, all of them would be, well, not at the moment immediately, but they would be all the Booleans. So essentially, each element of this this plays array, they will all be set to true initially. So every single option is selectable as you play in this new game. So of course, you mark it as false at some points. Let's say, for example, if play 0 is false, then the play button 0, which means that 1's button will not be displayed when you do your rolls. When you have to enable all the buttons, you don't enable every button, because some buttons you shouldn't enable them if they've been played before. So I guess, you know, there's that. And then dice selected, well, that's going to be all 5 of those dice picture boxes will call this event. And what this will do is going to change the image of that dice. So again, let me just go over here. I actually give you, let me see if I can find it. No, it's not here. It's Yahtzee. Hold on. Oh, there it is. Okay, dices. So I give you these dices as well. Now, I guess excuse this, it's actually the transparent images, why they show up like this. But of course, I give you dices 1 through 6. And these red ones right there are the ones where you select them. So you click on the dice, then you want to, let's say, for example, that dice had the 3.png. You want to use this 3, like the not the number, but the string 3.png, which will change that dice picture. So that way it will tell the user, it denotes that, oh, okay, it's been selected. So of course you have that Boolean array that tells you which dices have been selected. This is mostly just for the user so they know that, oh, okay, you did select that dice. So I'm going to give you this. You can of course, can interchange these accordingly as dices are selected and so forth. Now the roll button, of course, is going to randomly pick a new sort of number for each element in your dice values array, but of course only to the ones that are marked as, I guess, as true or false. They have to be accordingly. So remember, when you click on some of the dices, this Boolean array selected will be true or false at any position. And of course, if it's been selected, you don't want to change that dice value for that element. Let's say if selected at index 0 contains true, then you don't want to reassign dices 0 with a new random number. So just, of course, that's what you want to do in this roll button. That's all you have to do. And then, of course, these are going to be all the events that are going to be for all the plays. Now, for aces to sixes, let me go back to the UI here. So I guess aces, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I have all these 6 buttons all called that one event, because in reality, the 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, and 6s are all very similar to each other. So there's not much of a point to create different events for each one. So what you can do, if 1s is selected, then of course you traverse this array of dice values and add up all the 1s. So of course, maybe you can label these, I mean, I guess I didn't do a good job with this in my version, but of course you can give the name to be maybe, I guess you could also give it a name like maybe just B1. This could be B2 or B3. So of course you can extract that name field of that sender object and then get that last character, and then based on that character's value, you can of course use that in your comparisons as you traverse through that dice's values array. So of course, just a little help right there. And unfortunately, the rest of these, I can't think of a way to condense them. So I have separate events for, if I say click on the small straight button, large straight button, 3 of a kind button, 4 of a kind, can't think of exactly how you would be able to condense them. So I have separate events for each of them. Each of these will sort of verify based on the dice values. It will verify. So let's say for button small straight, if a small straight exists in that dice values, you output the value, whatever number, whatever value we have for small straight that we assigned. So I think small straight was 30, I believe. Yeah, so you output 30. Otherwise, you output 0 if there isn't a small straight. And of course, then you have to make sure that the appropriate Boolean variable is set to false. That way, this button won't be clickable again for this game. And of course, same thing for the rest of these. So anyway, I'll let you kind of work on the logic for how to verify small straight, full house, and so forth. So if you are a bit more advanced, you actually can use a dictionary in C#. So in C++, you have a thing called unordered map. Well, in C# you have a thing called dictionary, which is the same thing as an unordered map, which can really help you work on these, 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind, full house, and so forth. Even for Yahtzee, you can very easily verify Yahtzee using a dictionary. So anyway, that's really all there is to this lab. So I gave a little less code here because at this point I'd imagine you're a bit more, you're more experienced, or you're more comfortable with C# at this point in the lab, I'd imagine, if you are taking on this lab. So that's going to be all there is to say about this. So I guess happy coding, and until next time.